Come get your victory at the table. Let's talk. Let's talk. Come get your victory at the table. Let's talk. Let's talk.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on whatever time you have decided to tune in with us. We would like to welcome you to another episode of Victory at the Table Talk, where we have down-to-earth conversations about various topics to assist with your walk with Christ. Here at the table, you can get the victory, but you can also get a taste of Victory Apostolic Church right here in Matson, Illinois, where we are building victorious Christ-like lives. Enjoy this episode.
Praise the Lord and welcome to another episode of Victory at the Table Talk, the Gospel of Justice edition. I am Elder Bryant Warren. I am the CEO of the Gospel of Justice Ministry, and I will be your host today for our conversation about the Black community and law enforcement. Today I have three special guests with me. First of all, no stranger to any of us, we have Minister Jarell Smith, nicknamed Baby Hulk, is in the house, who is also the head of our youth ministry. Glad to have you here, brother.
Thank you.
And also have a very special young lady, Sister Kai Brown. Did I pronounce it right?
Yes.
Kai Brown is here, and she's going to provide a young person's viewpoint about this topic. And then I got my big sister. Actually, I think I'm actually older than her, but she's more mature than me and has more education and has a much nicer car. Dr. Tasha Brown is in the house. I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm happy to be here.
This is what I love about Dr. Tasha Brown. Whenever I call her, she answers. I don't know why she do. She answers the phone for me.
I got you.
And I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I want to talk. She has written a book. It is called Seller of Purple, A Christian Woman's Guide to Entrepreneurship by
Yes.
Dr. Tasha Brown. And it's
Yes.
this beautiful color and it kind of matches her outfit. So now where can I buy this book?
That book is available at sellerofpurplebook.com and also on amazon.com.
Tell you what I'm going to do. The first person that puts in the chat on Facebook that they want a copy of this book, I'm going to gift you with this book. You're going to
Nice.
come pick it up at the office at Victory Apostolic Church.
Nice.
So I want to jump right into this. So right now, the community is up in roar. We're bothered because, again, there has been another police shooting of a young black man.
Yeah.
And so, and also in the face of this, we also have the Derek Chauvin case that is still going on. We have the young brother, Dante Wright.
Okay.
Dante Wright.
Okay.
All right, we good? Okay. All right. So I wanted to have that conversation, but in light of all of this, I wanted to share something very quickly with you. So last week, I happened to be in Orlando, Florida with my family. It's my daughter's 16th birthday. We're deciding to go there for spring break. And as we're renting our car, they upgrade us to a Dodge Challenger. Now, if you don't know a Dodge Challenger, broom, it's 8-cylinder muscle
Yes.
car, Dukes of Hazzard type of thing. I'm like, I'm going to get myself in trouble in this car, right? Because I'm going to be speeding through. So we're having a great time, great vacation. My wife needs to go to the grocery store. I pull up at the grocery store to let her out. I look in my rearview mirror, and there's a police officer behind me.
In the parking lot.
In the parking lot.
Okay.
So, you know how it feels, Jarell. What happens when you see a police officer behind you? How do you feel about that?
My immediate thought is, what is he checking me for? What is he following me for?
Right. You start to get nervous, and I'm like, baby, you got to hurry up and get out the car. I got a cop behind me. I knew I hadn't done anything, but
Right.
that just seems to be a reaction for us, especially as black men, when we see a police officer pull up behind us. So she gets out the car. I make a left into the parking lot, and he follows me. And so in my mind again, well, maybe he's just happened to go in the same direction I am. I make another turn. I'm about to exit the parking lot. As I'm about to exit, a second police car that I hadn't noted pulls right in perpendicular in front of me and blocks me off. He pulls up behind me. They flash their lights. I mean, I'm thinking I'm like in Miami on a drug bust or something like that. I'd never seen something like that except for on an action movie or something. The one behind me, I'm looking through my side view mirror, he pulls his gun. And, I've been pulled over many times, but I've never had a police officer pull his gun. And I have to share with you that when I saw that happen, first thing that came to my mind was, I am about to die.
Wow.
So honestly, for the first 30, 45 seconds, I don't remember what happened because at that point, I'm afraid. Well, it turns out that they said that my tag on the car didn't match the car. It was registered to a Nissan, and this was a Dodge. And so I said, well, it's a rental car though, right?
Right.
So again, it seems that when, it turned out everything was okay. They were apologetic about pulling me over. But here's the question. If I were a white man, and he saw my wife get out the car, he knew she was black. If I was an older white man, would I have been pulled over?
Like Luke?
Would I have been pulled over? Would they have pulled out a gun? So it wasn't that the car was registered, that it was stolen. That was the first thing in my mind, was that they were going to say, hey, the plates are registered as a stolen vehicle. It's not. It's, even though they don't match, obviously it's a budget rental car. It's Orlando, spring break, tons of rental cars around. Why the hostility?
I mean, it's a good question. Why the hostility? So they probably did recognize that you were an African-American male. And I'm thinking about the fact that they called another officer to the scene. That gives me the impression that they thought that there was some type of threat, or that you needed multiple people to be apprehended. And so it's just the implicit bias is there. I think that's the elephant in the room. That's the thing that we don't want to talk about. There is implicit bias. And I jokingly said like Luke, but we know a couple of days ago, a white male, 61 years of age, who refused to wear a mask in a Menards or Home Depot, I've heard both stores mentioned, actually left and took a police officer who was attached to his car, or standing in his car window, drove him a few, I don't know if it was yards, miles, I don't know, whatever distance. And the guy, Luke, hit the officer in the head, but he wasn't shot.
Right. Yeah, he used it. I guess the officer used the hammer to break the window. The guy took the hammer from him and then used it against the officer.
But he still survived. Yeah.
Still survived.
But implicit bias, if that were an African American, this is a point that I'm trying to make. If there was an African American, implicit bias would have had that man shot. And so, we need to deal with that issue that's present in all of our law enforcement officers. How does a 26-year veteran who teaches police officers not know the difference between a gun and a taser? Implicit bias.
It's true. And this is another perspective that it gave me. When you're afraid, there are two reactions: fight or flight.
Yeah.
And this is another piece that came. I'm a man, and I'm thinking about my wife is in the grocery store, and I'm hemmed up for something I haven't done.
In a different state.
In a different state. And so I'm concerned now because I've not seen what my wife may do or may not do as she's coming out the grocery. Now you're adding another element to this. And so I'm 50 years old, so I ain't about to run nowhere, but I can understand maybe a young person saying, I'm afraid. I've got two choices, fight or flight. And when Dante Wright decided to get back in his car, was he afraid?
Yes, he had already told his mother. Go ahead, baby Luke, baby Hulk.
No, I was just going to say absolutely. I mean, just even my experiences dealing with law enforcement, they haven't been good. I can't name not one time. In fact, the same thing that you just mentioned, how you got pulled over for no reason. I remember just recently last year in August, how I was dropping my brother off at a construction job over in the suburb that starts with the R. I can't think of it. It's not
Robbins?
Richmond Park?
Riverdale?
No, it's west with an R, though.
Okay.
River Forest.
We'll call it
River Forest.
Yeah. Anyway, that suburb. And so I remember coming out of development. I'm getting ready to go to the gas station, and all of a sudden I see a police officer just follow me all the way to the gas station, assuming that because this car has tents on it, must be a black person driving this car in this neighborhood.
Right.
Must be a thief or something, and just he felt stupid when he was following me the whole time, and I'm noticing. And then I go and turn to go into the gas station. I see he gets in the left lane, but then realizes that I'm going into the gas station and just drives off. So I'm just, I don't understand. First of all, I think that the training of police officers is trash. It needs to be throw that in the trash.
Sure.
That is, they don't train our officers to understand the communities that they serve. That's one thing that I feel is very important, is that if you're going to serve a community and protect it, you have to understand the culture of that community. And we see a lot of officers, and particularly white officers, that just don't have any compassion, no care for the communities that they serve. I don't live here. I go somewhere else.
Correct.
When I come home.
Correct.
My neighborhood is good. My block is good. And that's all I care about, And so, like, I definitely feel that as she mentioned, that natural bias towards our community. And I just think it's very unfortunate, because Black men and women are losing their lives. This is somebody's child at the end of the day that unnecessarily oftentimes has to die because of someone's bias or natural ignorance. I always tell our young people that it's okay to challenge what you've been taught and told.
Sure.
Because not everything that you've been taught and told is in fact true. And so you have that right to challenge it if it is true. And so I just thank God that I've never grown up in the community where it's been all Black or all white. I went to a very diverse school, very diverse community. And so I was fortunate not to have those biases towards other cultures and communities.
I got you. But, as one of the things that I've thought about after my situation and looking at what we've seen in the media, I've thought about, have I ever really felt safe because a police officer was there? And I really did. I thought deep about it. Has there been a time that I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad the cops are here? And I can't remember a time that I did. Maybe when I was a kid and I was, traveling on this bus or something, or an L, maybe I would have, but I cannot remember definitely as an adult that I have felt safer because it was like there were cops there. In fact, when we were at Disney, I didn't think about it at the time. One of the parents who I was with, a Black woman, said, there's a cop and he's got a gun on him.
Wow.
I think for white people, they look at it as like, oh, wow, great. Our friends are here.
Right.
For us, it's like, now here, I'm here to enjoy myself, but, now I got to deal with this.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, I want to pull you into the conversation here. So how do you feel? Do you feel as a teenager, what is your viewpoint about law enforcement and what you've been seeing in the media regarding police and their interaction with Black people?
I get nervous when I see that type of thing because of the people that I'm around and the people that I know, and I don't want anything to happen to them.
Yeah, I understand that. And do you have any brothers or?
I have an older brother, yeah.
So, and your dad, do you ever feel nervous because, of police officers or anything, interacting with them?
Yes. I know my dad has gotten pulled over before with me and my brother in the back seat of the car, and it wasn't the best situation.
How did it make you feel?
I got really nervous because they were very hostile, and I was really little.
Wow.
Tell them more. I wasn't there. My husband mentioned that in that incident that they got out with guns drawn.
Wow.
And he had to say, don't you see my kids in the car? And I don't even remember. Do you remember some of the details of that experience?
Vaguely. We were on our way to school, and my dad's he's a loud person, and he has a lot of bass in his voice sometimes, so I don't know if that was a factor. What? But he got pulled over. Oh, my brother, he's 3 years older than me, and so he's young too. And Dad got pulled over, and they came out with their guns drawn, and I don't remember a lot of what was said, but I know that the lady did notice us in the back of the car, and we're looking around very confused because we've never experienced this before. And, being really little, you're supposed to think that they're there to protect you and help you, but I didn't know if my father was going to get shot or not. So.
No.
Can you imagine that trauma? And what I remember about the incidents he told me, I think he went around the detectives because they were detectives. And it was just in traffic, movement of traffic, he went around. And I think their power struck. Not all. I don't want to paint a monolith. They're not all the same. But I think these particular officers may have had, issue with power, and they didn't like the fact that he went around them. And so you just think about, that situation. We didn't have on that vehicle, it wasn't stolen.
Right.
He's not a drug lord.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right,
It's
right.
like, so if it's a traffic stop, why the hostility? Look at my child remembers hostility, not officer friendly, as
Right.
we were taught when we were growing up.
Sure.
And I think, I don't know if it's maybe they were both black, if I'm not mistaken. It was a male and a female officer, and that kind of shows that it's not just a certain race. It's the job as a whole, the people who are working there as a whole.
Well, I think that's a great piece.
point.
It's about the system.
It is.
It is about the system. When we talk about systemic racism, it impacts black people too, who are in positions of authority
Absolutely.
as well. So we look at it as that, it can only be white cops, but it is about the system. So when I got pulled over, when your dad was pulled over, they weren't pulling over because they were looking, who were they looking to serve? Who were they looking to protect?
Right.
The car hadn't been reported stolen or anything like that. It is about the system that says, here's a black man. And what they're really trying to do, they don't really care about the car. They want to know who's driving the car, and they're looking to investigate that person.
Absolutely.
So after they didn't, after they looked and found that my tags were okay, they didn't say go ahead and go home. They said, where's your driver's license? Now we need to figure out who you are in this situation. The same thing with your dad. That was an opportunity for them to have that opportunity to investigate another black man. So Dr. Brown, you have a son. Is he driving yet?
He is, and he and I have conversations all the time. He doesn't have his license just yet, but recently I said to him, I said, Chris, I don't know how to really be in this situation with you because I'm nervous, I'm concerned. Not only do I have a 17-year-old African-American son, his cousin is African-American and pretty stocky because he's an athlete. So here you have, these perceived threats. Our black bodies are threats. And so you have my son, my nephew, and then another one that we call our nephew as well. These three young men last night, went out, and I'm like, be safe. Don't go too, too far. Be safe. And I just hate how I feel. I'm a believer. I love the Lord. He heard my cry and pitied every groan.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I still have a son that I want to return home safely and a nephew. And so it really is troubling. It's troubling.
It is. So you as a black man, you a big guy. We call you Baby Hulk. How do you manage yourself when you are dealing with the police officers? What are some tips for, just as Kai explained, basically, she explained a black man, we have deeper voices. We got swag to us. And then some of us have more stature than others. How do you survive in a society that sees your body as a weapon? There's a NWA song, we won't name the title, but it says, my identity by itself causes violence, which is one of my favorite lines because it's how black people are, especially black men, are perceived. How do you manage that?
Well, I think being the director of the mentor ministry here, I think it's kind of ridiculous how I have to have 2 or 3 sessions a year just on handling themselves with the police and law enforcement. Just alone out of the year, 3 sessions based on that, because it's just so important for them to come home. You could be right later. We'll deal with it later. We'll get lawyers. We'll seek legal counsel later. Just come home. Do what you need to do to come home. And so for me, I remember running down the street, trying to meet up with a friend. And I had another friend, we were running, and we were on the north side of Chicago. I'll never forget it. Western and Irving Park. Running north on Western towards Montrose, and a white detective is driving in his car, decides to pull us over, says that there was a robbery reported at a Walgreens or a CVS. Now, mind you, on Irving Park, the CVS is all the way east. We're going north on Western. So we're not even close by the CVS with nothing in our hands.
Sure.
So I remember how me being calm really caused both of us to come home.
Yeah.
Because my friend was upset, yelling, cursing at the police officer, and he's got his gun drawn. He could have easily, bullets could have been flying everywhere. But I told him, I said, listen, we didn't do anything. Just stay calm. We didn't do anything. We're going to be all right. There's nothing he could do. We got ID on us.
Right.
We know we didn't do anything.
Right.
You know, and when I told him that, he remained calm. You know, and I think for me, it's just we have to train our kids just to remain calm.
But that's also doesn't guarantee that you're going to go home. We've seen cases like that where people have remained calm and reached for their wallet. And
Absolutely.
so this another experience because of that, I realized, because I know when I'm pulled on the traffic stop, tending to, can I reach for my wallet? Can I reach for my glove compartment? But when I was scared, I didn't do any of those things. I didn't reach. I had my hands down. I reached for my wallet without. I'm thinking like, because at that point I'm scared. This wasn't a routine traffic stop, and I know what's happening. I don't know, and so any of those things. I reached for my glove compartment. He could have shot me. I reached for my wallet. I could have been shot during that time period. So being calm all the time isn't really the answer for us, and we shouldn't have to always go beyond. And this is the thing I realized: these guys, each of them probably were no more than 26 years of age. They were afraid themselves. And so the second cop comes over and he asked him, he said, "Did you ask him if he has a gun?" He's like, "No, I didn't." He's like, "You have a gun?" I'm like, wow, this is kind of late to ask that question, you know? So they're afraid and they're trying to follow their own procedures as well. So
and they don't do a good job of following procedure at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember just seeing a video on social media. I don't remember the guy's name in particular, but he was coming out of his apartment complex to take out the trash. Police officers get a call to that apartment complex that there is a man abusing his wife. There's no description of that person. They don't have an ID of that person. It turns out that it was a white man who was beating his wife. But what happens is they just see the first person who's black, and the officers get out of the car. One officer says to his partner, "Is that him?" The officer says, "Probably."
Wow. Yeah.
Probably.
Right.
And so without even saying anything, no explanation, walks up to the man, tells him to turn around, starts putting him in handcuffs. You know, so how are you putting him in handcuffs, not telling him? He's just trying to figure out what's going on. What are y'all doing?
Right.
You know?
Well, that's similar to the Breonna Taylor case where they didn't follow procedures, and then young lady loses her life, and then here we are with the Dante Wright case. They're supposed to be reaching for a taser. I mean, what do we make of this when we see police people, black people being killed by officers who say they made a mistake?
It's inexcusable. It's inexcusable. And so, there's been a lot of calls for defunding the police and moving those resources into other areas. I'm not sure where I stand with that issue just yet about defunding the police. I don't know what the implications are, and how we would continue to be safe in our community. So I don't know just yet. But at the same time, I think there's some training that needs to happen. I think having those implicit bias tests done will help. There needs to be some sensitivity training. There just needs to be something else. I don't know what's going to happen, or what will it take for people to see black bodies differently? And so I want to just pull up something really quickly for the conversation about economic empowerment. I just want to go over here really quickly just for a moment.
No, that's important.
Because I feel as though if we continue to consume from these larger corporations who control the airways and they control what we see, then we will continue to have a plethora of images that show black bodies in these very threatening ways. I'm thankful for black creatives. I really am. I thank God for black creatives, and I thank God for those who are able to create their own images or show us in a different light, because it's very helpful to people understanding that we're not threatening. We can be non-threatening people. But if all you see are these images of big, bad, bold black folk, then you're going to always feel like we are a threat. And so, changing the images that we see, and the way economic empowerment deals with that is, think about it this way. For the Super Bowl, the companies that were able to demand or get your time and show you images were those who were very successful and profitable. Back in 1968, Dr. King in his I've Seen the Mountaintop speech actually talked about removing resources from Coca-Cola and at that point Wonder Bread, and he talked about how we need to boycott them.
Sure.
And take our resources and put them in other areas. Well, I say for 2021 that we as African Americans and those who are our allies, black and brown people, we need to look at where our money goes and how we are funding people to put in front of us images that are threatening.
Sure.
We fund people to put out the messages about us by patronizing them, by buying all of their stuff. And so my job, my journey is to really raise the banner and to sound the alarm about economic empowerment. And I know that message gets lost because when we start thinking about Black people and buying Black, let me just say, some folks don't want other people to win, right? And so if, I'm not going to put you on, so I'm not going to support you. I'll support Jay-Z and I'll support all these other, African Americans, but I just can't support you because you like me. And so I don't want to entertain that part of the conversation. I want to look at the part of, let me teach you how to make your own. Let me teach you how to be an entrepreneur. Let me teach you how to drive, have an economic engine, how to have a business and how to contribute so that we have other options versus buying white. I don't want to always buy, my oppressor's stuff. I feel like I'm about to go into 1960. I don't want to buy my oppressor's stuff. I want to buy my own. I want my name on everything that I own if I can. And so I'm hoping that we can see how economics really goes well with civil rights. Dr. King said it back in 1968.
I agree. And this goes back. I want to jump to the Adam Toledo case, and it's the young Latino boy, 13 years of age, who was shot by the police at 2:30 in the morning. Supposedly, allegedly, he had a gun from the video. And so it kind of disturbs me because what I see on social media, people are saying, why was he out at 2:30 in the morning? Where were his parents? What was he doing out there at 2:30? Now, I don't know about everybody else, but there were times that as a kid, I may have snuck out the house myself. All of it, but it cost my life.
No, it shouldn't.
And so what I want, he's from the Little Village area, and this goes back to your comment, Tasha, is that in Little Village, the poverty rate is 34%. In Chicago, it's 22%. So it's higher than the average of Chicago, 34%. So to give you an idea, Homewood is 6%. I believe Barrington is 3%. So you think there's a chance that if a white kid in Barrington leaves their house at 2:30 in the morning, they're going to find drugs and automatic weapons in Barrington? No. Probably not. So I think that we need to have a bigger conversation. Instead of just looking at the parents, we need to look at how is it that we have a community in which a kid can't be a kid and sneak out the house, and maybe the parent doesn't know, and then find drugs and find opportunities for automatic weapons. So it kind of goes back to this whole economic oppression in our communities and how we can improve on that.
Yeah, and the other part that it brings up, so that along with the community, and I this might be an unpopular opinion, but I don't like how we only come out when something happens to a child. The parent cried for help for her son. Her son was, declared missing like a day or two before. And it wasn't the first time that the parent had expressed needing help for her son. And so where are we to show up when parents need help with their sons? We can show up when, a son is killed, right? But what about when a parent is saying, I need help? Where are the programs? Where are the mentors? Where are the people who say, come on, Adam, you you shouldn't be out late? Where are the people on the porch is saying, curfew, you need to be at home. And so I think there needs to be a shift and some balance in how we police our own community, how we show up for our own. I really think that we need to rethink, how do we show up for each other? And so like in I'm not sure what community it is. I want to say the Puerto Rican Village, but right off of like Division and let's say Damon, I forget the name of the community. It may be Humboldt Park. I think it's Humboldt Park. Okay. And how a lot of the churches provide a sanctuary.
Yep, Humboldt Park.
Yeah, for those who did not have, for the immigrants. And so are we providing sanctuary for our African-American males, our Black and brown sons and daughters? What do we do? How are we caring for them?
I agree. So you're working with young men. I mean, I'm sure you've seen some of your kids who probably run away from home from time to time. And so how do we manage and make sure that kids get the kind of resources that they need?
Well, first of all, before I even started doing mentoring here at the church, I was doing mentoring outside of Victory. That was like my weekend job, mentoring kids in the foster care system.
Nice.
And they absolutely needed it because they weren't just in the foster care system. They had all kind of mental and social issues, ADHD and whatnot. And so for me, I think it's very critical that these kids have some kind of mentor or model to take them out of their environment. I thought it was so important while I was mentoring to take the kids that I mentored in the city, in the roughest parts of the city, outside of that environment. Take them downtown shopping, or, you know, to a different park. You know, the parks in their neighborhoods don't look nothing like these suburban parks out here. And so that was my thing, was just showing them something different. And so when they, even the music, I was just being just a different influence on them. So I knew that they knew all the lyrics to the rap songs and the rap lyrics.
Sure.
But then I said, you know what? Some of this stuff got cussing in it, and it's about drugs, and you don't even know what you're singing about. So I flipped the station to a country song, a country station, and they love country music now.
Right.
So it's just that that influence, that positive influence, is much needed, I think. And we talk about the youth. What can we do for the youth? Well, let's turn back to the adults. We need men to step up. We need men to step up in the homes. I think every child is not going to look at their father as their mentor, but if they have a father with a positive influence on their life, at least he'll be their hero.
Gotcha.
You know,
Gotcha.
and I think that's very important, that they have that male presence. And even in the basement, we talked about how just the male presence impacts the daughters and the sons, in many different ways. And so it kind of, you know, influence the trajectory of their lives.
Absolutely.
You know, so.
But I think that you hit on the key piece. You know, you talked about defunding the police, which I don't like the term. I believe terminology. So I do believe in reforming police, and rethinking the police.
Yeah.
But it goes back to the conversation that you're having. It's about resources and opportunity.
Absolutely.
And so some of the funds, and I bet you in Little Village, I bet you they have more police officers there per capita than probably in Barrington or Homewood or Flossmoor, because we are now funding, or we are making money off of poor communities.
Yeah.
People are making careers off of that by being police officers in these areas. But what if we were to take some of those funds, and there was resources that Adam Toledo's mom could have gone to and say, hey, my kid needs services because there's some mental or emotional issues that are going on there, or that there's jobs there. So we talk about black men not being there, but a lot of them are, maybe they're working, they may have to work 2 or 3 jobs. We know that we have a system that disproportionately incarcerates black men, so they're not in the homes. So how do we provide these resources in our community so that we can have something better than just police? We have to call the police every time that there's a problem. And so we've also seen that happen when people have called the police because they have a mentally ill person who's maybe out of control, and maybe they just need somebody to use some techniques to keep them calm, but the person ends up shot and killed.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
But, you know, I think you're absolutely right. When I worked for the city of Chicago, one of the programs I worked for was for the after-school program. And so we had the CDBG grant. And so I went into a lot of after-school programs, and we learned at that time that most children were incarcerated during school hours.
Wow.
Because principals will call the police on the children.
Wow.
And so a high arrest rate happened during that time frame. And so what our program did was to actually provide out-of-school time care for children who were able to make it out of school, you know, onto the street. And so having more resources available to help with the social emotional is definitely important. You all know that years ago, funding was restricted for mental health. And funding is drying up all across the board. So when you ask the question, my thing always goes back to, let's follow the dollars, right? Let's follow the dollars, because we have 2 options. One option is to wait for the government to have enough money in its coffers to pay us as faith leaders or churches, nonprofits to do the work. Or we can have private donors who can do what needs to be done in order for us to do the work. At the end of the day, money is needed for the work to be done. You know, no more praying, no more fasting. Open up your pocketbooks, write a check, fund some programs to provide these services. So again, it's going to happen one of 2 ways. One way is with the government. The other way is with individuals, you know, putting money and resources behind that. But when I say follow the dollar, when it comes to people, we often have enough money to take care of those things that we want, right? We have enough money to buy the bags, to buy the clothes, to do the makeup, the hair, the accessories, the toys, but we don't have enough money to put into our churches, our nonprofits to help us do the work. If we could reimagine how we use our money, if we can reimagine using our money to help our communities, then we can lift our own communities. We don't have to wait for somebody else to do it, but we need to know that it's possible. And so I'm not suggesting that people not use the money that they've earned from their hard work to do what they want to do to make themselves have, an enjoyable lifestyle. I'm not all suggesting that, but I am saying create space and opportunity to replenish our communities, to really invest back into our communities. It's an investment. And it's an investment that may not have an immediate dividend or immediate payoff, but generations from now will be really blessed because of what people had to do today. We are living today this free life because of the sweat equity of the slaves, the sweat equity of the civil rights leaders. They didn't see an immediate return on their investment.
Correct.
So we shouldn't expect an immediate return on our investment, but we should expect things to happen generations from now. I just want to say really quickly about my daughter. We had a conversation, I don't know how long ago it was, but we were at the table with my son, my daughter, my husband, and I said, I do have some hope for the future. If we don't, after we saw the documentary, right, we were talking about food and the resources of the earth not being used appropriately. But I said, but if people like my daughter's generation really are woke and they awaken to all the social ills and they really start to put things in motion, I do believe that 20, 30 years from now, we would really have a better culture and a better environment.
Yeah, we appreciate that. That's
A lot of people talk about how there's just only a few bad apples. Can you guys speak on the fact that some of these quote unquote good apples, why aren't they speaking up about their counterparts that are wrong?
Conforming.
Well, let's talk about the young lady in Buffalo, New York. Police officer 20 years ago I believe it was like 15, 20 years ago that she was stopping one of her colleagues from putting a chokehold on a victim, and right, and she's a black woman. Cop was white, and then she was fired from her job. She lost her job. She was 1 year away from retirement.
Yep.
And then she just recently won
Praise
the
the
case.
Lord. Yes, God.
And so she's going to get back pay. She's going to get the retirement. But over this time period, if it probably wasn't for the media shout out because of the violence we've seen, because of cameras and everything, she may not have still gotten the justice that she needed.
Yeah.
So it opens up the conversation of, what do we need to do in order to get our police officers? They call it the blue secret,
The blue code.
The blue code. How do we break that and we have good cops to start to speak out? What can we do?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. Let's think about human nature in general. I mean, let me put a little Bible on it real quick, and then I'll bike my way out of it. I mean, how can two walk together except they be agree, right? And so there's this sense of agreement. I don't think agreement is wrong. I do think cover-up and integrity are the issues, right? Being in agreement, I get it. But when you are not using integrity to make a decision, I don't know how to get across or get around that, because not only do we have the blue code, but there's the code of silence on the street, right? If somebody does something and I witness it, I'm not going to say anything because snitches get stitches. You know what I mean?
Right,
you know what I'm
right,
saying?
right, exactly,
Yeah.
right.
So I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do in that situation. I don't know if Baby Hulk has something, or even, Kai, what you all think about that. But I don't know.
I tell my mentees this scripture all the time. I says to know wrong but do right is still sin. And if you are standing back and watching, the abuse happen, if you're standing back and watching the systematical racism happen, if you're standing back and watching, your other police officers just misabusing their power, you're guilty too. You're participating in it because you refuse to stand up for it.
Sure.
Stand up against it, rather. And I just feel like they are worried about, their well-being. Like, hey, this is how I feed my family.
Right.
You know,
Right.
if I stand up against this, then I won't have a job, then I won't be able to provide for my family. But at the same time, that's why I said, go back to what I said earlier, how I feel as though we attack the police, but our entire justice system needs to be thrown in the trash.
Right.
It is just not good.
Yeah.
And if we're going to attack police, then we might as well come all the way up to the justice system
absolutely.
too, because it is just terrible. You know, it's a ridiculous how people are being locked up for nonviolent offenses and, you know, being sentenced to 20 and 30 years. So it just doesn't make any sense. And then you have racist judges. And you know, certain, in particular, black men will get a certain judge that they know is racist on their case, and to, you know, put them in jail longer. And I just feel that the training, as we said, that the training just needs to be different, and there needs to be included some mental health training, some mental, I mean, because we mentioned it, how police will get domestic calls, even for the young man, the young Latino boy who was shot and killed. His mother reached out for resources, but oftentimes I noticed that even when officers come to these apartments, that they don't really have anything to offer.
Exactly.
I can give you a counselor's number to talk to, and then they talk to that. But even that counselor doesn't even understand that where the mother is coming from or that community. So it's like, well, really, there aren't any resources out here for them, you know. And even the officers have very little information or knowledge themselves for how to even, you know, be of any help. You know, in those situations. So I just feel that it all goes back to training. It all goes back to resources. And I feel that we as a community have to come together and demand that change happens, and demand that this structure gets reorganized and rebuilt.
Yeah.
You know, I think that one piece that we're trying here with the Gospel Justice Ministry is actually building personal relationships with police officers in the community. So I have had a conversation. I won't say his name yet, but please stay tuned for Victory Table Talk in the future, where he is planning to come. He actually received permission from his chief of police to come and have a conversation about what's going on. And what he said to me on the phone was, somebody has to speak out. I mean, I was shocked that he was willing to do that and take this risk. So I think that we need to be able to show police officers that they do have people who care about them, that they're willing to partner with them. And that kind of depends on us having some one-on-one conversations. And so I've had a one-on-one conversation with the chief of police here in Matteson. We're hoping to have some more conversations in the future, other police officers who are in this area. So as we start having these one-on-one conversations, now we can start building some community. We can build some support, and perhaps they are willing to actually speak out on some of these issues. And not only just speak out, but actually do something about it as well. So.
Yeah, you mentioned the word risk, and that's huge, right? Taking a risk when you speak out. But like you said, if he doesn't have a community supporting him to say, we stand behind you, then it becomes very fearful to take that risk. There's so much retaliation that happens. I mean, you think about even in the Army, without going down that whole rabbit hole, I think at the end of the day, we need to see that it's not an easy answer, is not an easy fix, but there's a dismantling of a lot of systems, the dismantling of a lot of thoughts, a lot of behaviors, a lot of wrong training. We got to unlearn and then relearn, undo and then redo. So it's a lot of that has to take place. But I'm glad it's starting with the step. You know, we've taken steps in the right direction.
It is. You know, as a church, I think that we have to focus on the kingdom of God that Jesus talks about. We spend so much time talking about heaven. And one day I want to get there, you know, when it's my time to get there. But Jesus talks about the kingdom of heaven being here on earth. And what that looks like is a place that has justice, righteousness. People have needs. Their needs are met. There's truth telling. There isn't lying on one another. There's accountability for one another. There's love in the community. And so I believe that the church, and we're seeing that happen here at Victory and through the Gospel Justice Ministry, that not only are we providing food for people to feed their bodies, but we also have to be able to provide provide resources for people as well, so that we can start building that community here as well. So I'm really grateful to have you all here as we continue, and my co-workers in the kingdom. And we have Sister Kai. I'm so grateful to have you here.
Yeah.
Minister Jarell Smith, Baby Hoke in the house.
Baby Hoke.
And my big sister, Reverend Dr. Tasha Brown, a member to Get That Book, Seller of Purple.
Yes.
She knows about it. Look at her. She all dressed up nice and everything.
Purple, darling.
You can't do all that without some money. So she knows all about it. So I thank you all for being here. This concludes our episode of Victory at the Table Talk, and look forward to seeing you all again soon. So have a victorious day and be blessed.
Come get your victory at the table.